The race itself took less than 11 seconds, but it was several minutes until they had a clear winner. It was a hand-timed race, and the two Americans who crossed the finish line first did so in a virtual tie. As the two photographers rushed into the makeshift darkroom under the stands, those two men, along with the tens of thousands of spectators, sat anxiously awaiting the final verdict. A few minutes later, the photographer emerged. The picture was still wet with developing agents, but the winner of the race was undeniable. Today is Friday, August 1st, 2025, and on this day in 1932, Eddie Tolan beat Ralph Metcalfe in the Olympic 100-meter final in what was the first ever race determined by photo finish. In this episode, we'll learn more about these two athletes and examine the cutting-edge technology that revolutionized virtual ties within sprinting events forever. I'm your host, Running Up That Hillary, and you are listening to Today in Running History. Beyond excited to announce a new sponsor of Today in Running History. Today is Fueled Friday, which means that this episode is made possible by Fuel Goods. Fuel Goods has been my partner in running nutrition since before that was even their name. About 3 years ago, I discovered a bi-monthly subscription service called the Runner Box, and I was immediately hooked. Basically, every other month, they send subscribers a box filled with 10 to 12 items, from pre-run snack bars and electrolytes to mid-run gels and chews to post-run protein mixes, plus some other products like sunscreen, deodorant, body wipes. Basically, any type of product a runner may need sent in single-serve sizes for you to try out. And then whenever you find something that works for you, you can purchase it off their Fuel marketplace. Over the years, Fuel Goods has evolved from just a subscription service to a complete partner in sports nutrition. And something really cool that they launched recently is their Fuel Finder quiz, which is basically like eHarmony for running fuel. You put in a ton of info, including your flavor preferences, activity type, budget, and then it will curate a personalized bundle that is tailored to your running needs. I just took the quiz and I am hoping to have the physical box of products to share with y'all next week during Fueled Friday. But for now, check out the link in the episode description to take the Fuel Goods Fuel Finder quiz for yourself. Okay, guys, let's head back to the 1932 Olympics in Los Angeles, California to meet Eddie Tolan and Ralph Metcalfe. Thomas Edward Tolan, who went by Eddie to differentiate from his father, who was also Thomas, was born in 1909 in Denver, Colorado. The family moved to Salt Lake City and later to Detroit, which is where Tolan attended high school and began his track career. He became the Michigan state champion in both the 100 and 220-yard dashes. In 1927, Eddie Tolan went to attend the University of Michigan in nearby Ann Arbor. Some accounts say that he was supposed to play football for the Wolverines, but was cut after 3 days by racist coaches who did not want a black athlete on their team, no matter how talented he was. Other accounts say that he did not play football because he was injured. The track coach, however, saw the football team's loss as his team's gain and offered Eddie Tolan an opportunity to join. And a side note about that track coach. His name was Stephen Farrell, and back in the 1880s and 90s, he was quite the talented runner himself. But instead of running collegiately, since that was not a huge thing yet, Farrell would instead race against horses as part of the Barnum and Bailey traveling circus. By the early 20th century, intercollegiate track meets were much more established, so Stephen Farrell quit the circus life to become a track and field coach in Michigan. But anyways, back to Eddie Tolan. As a sophomore at Michigan, Tolan broke the Big Ten Conference record for the 100-yard dash. And then the following year at that same event, Tolan broke the world record in the 100-yard dash. And then just 2 months later, he broke the world record for the 100 meters. Meanwhile, at another Midwestern school, Ralph Metcalfe was paving a similar path to Tolan's. Metcalfe was born in Atlanta in 1910, but grew up in Chicago. He attended Marquette University in Milwaukee, Wisconsin on a track scholarship, and while he was there, tied Eddie Tolan's 100-meter world record. Ralph Metcalfe was also a talented 200-meter runner, and while at Marquette, he became the first man in history to win the NCAA 200-meter title on 3 consecutive occasions. Eddie Tolan and Ralph Metcalfe first met and raced each other at the 1932 U.S. Olympic Trials for Track and Field held in Stanford, California. Both men raced in the 100 and 200-meter races at the trials, with Metcalfe winning and Tolan coming in second in each race. Both were named to Team USA. Just 2 weeks later, Eddie Tolan and Ralph Metcalfe met again, this time at the 1932 Olympics in Los Angeles. The 100 meters was their first event. 33 runners from 17 different countries lined up for the preliminary heats on July 31st, and the top 3 athletes from each heat would move on to the quarterfinals. Much like the heats during the 400 meters at the 1908 Olympics I told y'all about last week, these heats had varying numbers of competitors. A few of the heats only had 4 runners, which meant that everyone except for the last place guy would move on, and I feel like that would suck even more than losing alongside a few people. Just being the one and only guy to not make it to the finals. But anyways, 21 of the 33 moved on to the quarterfinals that same day, although 2 of them withdrew before the second round. It was in the very first heat of the quarterfinals that Eddie Tolan won in a new Olympic record of 10.53 seconds. Ralph Metcalfe won his heat as well, and both men moved on to the semifinals. The semifinals were the next day, and once again, Tolan and Metcalfe won their respective heats, moving them both to the final round later that same afternoon. 6 men lined up for that race. In addition to Tolan and Metcalfe, there was a third American, George Simpson, plus 1 man each from Germany, South Africa, and Japan. The starting gun went off, and in less than 11 seconds, all 6 men had crossed the finish line. It was clear from the beginning that Eddie Tolan and Ralph Metcalfe had finished before the other 4 athletes, though with no instant replay or even Polaroids, they were left in limbo to find out which of the 2 had crossed first. What was for certain, even before the film could be developed, was that both men crossed in a new world record of 10.3 seconds, since hand-timed races were only accurate down to a 1/10 of a second. Metcalfe believed from the beginning that he had won the race, and according to an article posted the following day in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, the general consensus among the judges and spectators was the same. And here is where things get even trickier. Up until this point, the winner of a race was whichever competitor fully crossed the finish line first. A year later, the rule would be changed to the current rule of whichever athlete reaches the line first. The photographs of the finish were developed in a temporary darkroom that had been set up under the stands at the Los Angeles Coliseum in case of this exact scenario. When the photographer emerged, the footage clearly showed Metcalfe, the taller of the 2 men, reaching the line with his chest first, but it showed that Tolan was the one who actually crossed the line first. Ultimately, Eddie Tolan was named the champion and Ralph Metcalfe won silver, a decision that Metcalfe disputed until the day he died 46 years later. The 2 men raced each other again just 2 days later at the final for the 200 meters. In that race, however, no new technology was needed to show that Eddie Tolan had won with a new Olympic record of 21.2 seconds. With that second gold, Tolan became the first Black athlete to win 2 Olympic gold medals and cemented his place in history. 1932 would be his first and final Olympic appearance. As for Ralph Metcalfe, he returned to the Olympics in 1936 and repeated his second-place finish in the 100-meter final. But he finally got his Olympic gold medal a few days later as part of the men's 4x100-meter relay. And that is all I have for y'all today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I cannot believe it has already been a month, and I cannot express to y'all how much it means to me that you continue to listen. Please make sure to like, subscribe, comment, share, rate the show a million stars, and then come join me tomorrow as we head to the 1928 Olympics for the controversial race that removed the women's 800 meters for 32 years. As a reminder, it is Fueled Friday, and today's episode is sponsored by Fuel Goods. Check out the link in my bio to take the Fuel Finder quiz and find your perfect sports nutrition match. I'm your host, Running Up That Hillary, and this has been Today in Running History. Here's the intro. Eddie Tolan and Ralph Metcalfe first met and raced each other at the 1932 Olympic track trials. No, U.S. Olympic trials. Okay. Eddie Tolan and Ralph Metcalfe. Ralph Metcalfe. Okay, God. Sent in single serve sizes for you to. God dang it. Anytime I put like alliteration in a row, I know I'm gonna struggle. Okay. That's the end of the show. Here's the end of the show.